All right, let's talk about something big. What if you could solve a whole country's energy crisis without building a single new power plant? Sounds kind of impossible, right? Well, today we're diving into a really bold proposal for a technology called GridGuard. It claims it can put an end to South Africa's crippling power cuts, what they call load shedding, and not with some huge brute force solution, but with a tiny, smart, and totally invisible switch. And that really is the big idea here, the core question. Forget everything you think you know about energy. Building more power stations, installing giant batteries. What if the answer isn't about more power? What if you could stop a nationwide blackout with a million tiny tweaks? It's a complete flip of the script, really. A move away from just trying to generate more supply and towards intelligently and subtly managing demand.
Now, to really get why that question is so important, you have to understand the sheer scale of the problem we're talking about. The source documents put a number on it, and it is a staggering one. We're talking 50 million rand. That's the estimated cost of load shedding to South Africa's economy every single hour. Just let that sink in. The financial bleed from this is absolutely immense.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Section 1, South Africa's power problem. We're going to look at the daily reality of what they call load shedding. It's so much more than just the lights going out. It's about constant instability on the entire grid. And think about this. Every time the power comes surging back on, it can physically damage expensive equipment. The root cause? There just isn't enough power to go around. And as you can imagine, all of this adds up to widespread and totally understandable public frustration.
All right, so that's the problem, and it's a big one. So what's the proposed solution? This is where the GridGuard idea comes in. It's pitched as a totally new way of thinking about grid stability.
So what is this thing? Well, according to the document from its developers, GridGuard is a technology built specifically to get rid of load shedding. But here's the kicker. The really clever part is how it does it. It's not about making more power. It's about managing demand from this huge, untapped resource that's already in millions of homes, electric water heaters, or as they're known in South Africa, geysers. And this slide really nails the difference in thinking. Load shedding is like a giant, clumsy off switch. Boom! Power is gone for an entire neighborhood. GridGuard, though, is pitched as something completely different. It's like a tiny, smart dimmer switch that's connected to millions of those water heaters all at the same time. So instead of a few thousand people losing all their power, millions of people, well, they lose an amount of power so small they'd probably never even notice. Okay, that sounds amazing in theory, right? But how does it actually work? Let's peel back the layers and look at the tech behind these tiny little tweaks. This quote from the proposal really gets to the heart of it. Intelligent load management without disruption. The goal here isn't just to cut power. It's to do it so subtly, so cleverly, that you don't even know it's happening. And that is a world away from older systems that would just flick your water heater off and surprise, you're having a cold shower. Okay, so here's the step-by-step. Think of the power grid like a finely tuned engine that needs to run at exactly 50 hertz. When too many people use electricity at once, the engine starts to strain and that frequency drops. As soon as it dips below a certain point, let's say 49.8 hertz, boom, the little GridGuard devices on water heaters all kick in. And again, they don't switch the heater off, they just trim its power usage by a little bit. When millions of them do this at once, the total demand on the grid drops, the engine stops straining, the frequency goes back up to 50 hertz, and the units just switch back to normal. It's all automatic. A real-time balancing act happening in milliseconds. And when you look at the specs in the proposal, a couple of things just jump off the page. First, that response time, less than 1 second. That is way faster than any power plant can fire up to add more electricity to the grid. And second, the lifespan is over 15 years. So we're not talking about some temporary Band-Aid here. This is being proposed as real long-term infrastructure. And there's some really clever, patented tech inside these things. For example, cycle limiting is what lets it reduce the power draw without stopping the water from actually heating up. That's the secret sauce. Then there's zero voltage switching, which is super important because it protects your appliance and the grid itself from those nasty power surges. And maybe the best part? It all happens right on the device itself. It doesn't need to be connected to the cloud or have an internet connection to work. It just works. So the tech is smart, for sure. But does the money add up? This is where we get to what the proposal calls the billion rand payoff. Let's dig into the numbers. What's really interesting is how they frame it as a scalable solution. The idea is you roll it out in phases. Once you hit 1 million units, they claim you can prevent stage 1 load shedding. Get to 3 million units, and you can stop up to stage 3, which apparently covers most of the common blackouts. And if you go all the way to 7 million units, the proposal says you could even stop the really severe stage 7 events. And this is probably the most powerful slide in the whole business case. To get the 3,600 megawatts you'd need to stop those common stage 3 blackouts, they estimate GridGuard would cost around 6.75 billion rand. Now, look at the other options. Massive battery storage projects, you're looking at over 30 billion. And building a whole new power station, well, that's a staggering 150 billion rand. Plus, it would take you more than 10 years to even build it.
So let's just zero in on that number for a second. The total investment being proposed is 6.75 billion rand. That's the price tag, according to this plan, to roll out 3 million of these units and basically wipe out the most common, most damaging power cuts, okay? 6.75 billion. Remember that.
Okay, so you've got that 6.75 billion investment in your head. Now the proposal puts that right next to this number, over 40 billion rand. And that's not the total savings, that's the estimated savings to the economy every single year. It's a pretty stark contrast. Invest this much once, save that much annually.
And this is where the business case just becomes kind of mind-blowing. The numbers presented here are frankly wild. An investment of 6.75 billion, generating over 40 billion in savings every year. They calculate a payback period of, wait for it, 7 days, and an annual return on investment of 1,600%. I mean, numbers like that, whether you believe them or not, are pretty much impossible to ignore.
Okay, so we've seen the tech, and we've seen the frankly incredible numbers, but what's the big picture? What's the ultimate vision here? Well, that brings us to the final section, a nation switched on. The dream of a South Africa after load shedding.
The roadmap laid out in the document seems pretty straightforward. They suggest a 3-year plan. You start with a small pilot project. Then, in the first year, you roll out 1 million units in the big cities, which they say is enough to kill stage 1 load shedding right there. And from there, the goal is a full national rollout within just 3 years.
And the argument is that this is about so much more than just keeping our TVs on. The claimed benefits are truly nation-changing. We're talking about real economic growth because businesses and investors can finally have confidence. We're talking about massive social impact, keeping the power on in schools and hospitals. And there's even a green angle, less need for all those polluting diesel generators people use during blackouts.
So, the core argument of the whole proposal really boils down to this one point. This isn't some futuristic dream. They're arguing that this is ready to go now. They claim the tech is certified and approved by the right authorities, the software is built and working, and the business case is, well, in their own words, overwhelming.
And so our look at this GridGuard proposal ends exactly where the document itself ends. It's laid out the tech, the plan, and that really eye-popping financial case. And it finishes by asking what it frames as the only question left. Not if this is a good idea or if it should be done, but just how quickly can we start? And that is a very powerful question to leave you with.